starting from Parliament, where it will no longer resume next week Tuesday because the Speaker of the House, Alban Bagbin, has postponed the upcoming meeting indefinitely. For reasons beyond his control, the Speaker says his initial notice for members to return to post on 14th October can no longer hold. A new date will be announced later. This development comes at a time when the House was expected to consider key legislative and policy matters, including the presentation of the 2026 budget statement and economic policy. Estimates for ministries, departments and agencies would equally delay with no end in sight to the ongoing recess of the legislative body. When the House resumes, two new members of Parliament on the majority side, including Bernard Bediako for Akwetia and Professor Asiedu-Dartey for Tamale Central, would be sworn into office, and this is one keenly expected. Let's find out from our parliamentary correspondent what he's been able to pick up as a result of the news we've got that the House will not reconvene as expected for next week Tuesday. Christian Yali is our parliamentary correspondent. He's joined us for a quick chat. Christian, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Have you been able to pick any information as to why the House will not reconvene as expected?
Martin, already there's one that critics of this government have raised concerns about. For many who believe that there are a number of legislative instruments like the LI 2462 that allows mining in forest reserves, which they believe that this is just a diversionary tactic or a delay tactic by the House to prevent a possible repeal of this law. It is one that critics have raised. There is another issue even concerning the fact that, according to some of them, and when you talk to members from the opposition and their supporters, that government seemingly lacks the necessary financial resources to fund activities of the various MDAs, for which reason they are delaying in, resuming the duty of the legislative arm of government. The Speaker of Parliament has not indicated the actual reasons, what he cites to be circumstances beyond his control. Yet, it is one coming at a time when you have a lot of national issues being at the front burner, that one would presuppose that the House would have reconvened as soon as possible to delve into some of these matters. You know about the issue about the Ghana-U.S. deportation deal, which has been at the front burner. Very recently, somewhere last week or two, we had the Minority Caucus raise concerns about it, and a fact that the government should, as a matter of urgency, submit that memorandum of understanding before Parliament for parliamentary ratification. But you know that the harm has been caused already, because government has, in a way, accepted some of these deportees, and some of them have been, sent to their countries of origin. There is also that issue raging debate about the DSTV subscription rate, which the minority has even called for the head of the communication minister, Sam Nate George. The majority MPs have rebutted that and called that call as, uncalled for or dead on arrival. So there are issues, national ones really, that you expect a parliamentary intervention sort of. And so many had expected that next week by the Tuesday, which is October 14th, the House would have resumed, so that some of these issues would have received a parliamentary, oversight and action taken upon them thereof. But with this latest move by the Speaker, which in a way is just giving us a no sight or end in sight to the recess that is currently holding, it raises a lot of questions, really, Martin.
Right, and I'm sure you've also at least interacted with a number of members of Parliament ahead of the expected resumption, which has now been put on ice. What have they been telling you regarding this new announcement? What have you picked up?
Martin, you know that already you have the minority raising concerns even about the recent engagement by the president with CSOs on environment concerning illegal mining, which they see it to be nothing really, because they realize that one of the concerns even has been that if government could not provide ample time for the CSOs to ask questions, and it was just one that was full of presentation, then really it wasn't, it could not give much result as were desired or required. And so the minority already has had, an entrenched position about how they feel of government so far in office, and how some of the promises that were made by current ministers when they were in opposition, for instance, about ending galamsey or being able to end galamsey in one day, in 24 hours. We know that there are people like Sam Mate George, for instance, who are on record to have made such pronouncements way back in opposition before coming into office. And so many of the minority MPs assessing the 9 or 10 months of government in office are of the view that there are a number of failures on the side of government in dealing with some of those urgent issues like that of galamsey, for instance, for which reason they believe that the delay in the resumption of duty for members of parliament is one that is not in a good faith. Also because you would expect that somewhere next month in November, we should have the budget presentation for the 2026 fiscal year, which should come with its own work, because it takes a lot. When you mentioned the estimate for ministries, departments, and agencies, and once all of these are done, that would bring in the issue of the appropriation bill that would have to be approved by Parliament. That also takes some days. Martin, you remember that there are a lot of legislative instruments that did not mature before Parliament went on recess in August. And so some of those legislative instruments and some of the bills that were presented, that were referred back to the committees to look at them, are to be looked at. And so it looks like a lot of
There's quite a lot to be done.
Of it really ahead of Parliament. And so further delays wouldn't be helpful.
All right. Christian Yali, thank you for your time and giving us, at least an idea of what some MPs are thinking about ahead of the resumption of Parliament. So we'll definitely update you subsequently on what the issue is as regards why the Speaker has decided to postpone the resumption of Parliament. And in a jiffy, we would also try and get, someone who's been monitoring the space, who actually has followed parliamentary conversations and deliberations for a number of years now, to find out what he is also gleaning from the corridors of power to be the reason why the Speaker may have postponed the House. It is yet to to be clear to especially those who are following parliamentary conversations to find out what exactly the reason may be. But maybe while we wait for that, let's see if we can pick the thoughts of Dr. Rashid Draman, Executive Director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Doc, good evening. Thank you for your time on 3FM.
Good evening, Martin.
To start with, what is your understanding of what the Speaker says that the postponement of the resumption of Parliament is as a result of reasons beyond his control? Is anything really beyond the control of the Speaker?
Well, right now, I think this is subject to a lot of interpretations and guesswork, given that the Right Honourable Speaker didn't clearly say why. I mean, he would have helped all of us if he had said clearly the reasons. But I can hazard a number of possible reasons. Perhaps there's an emergency situation where the entire leadership of Parliament might be out of town. That's number one. Number two, it could be the case that Parliament doesn't have money. And we know that our economy has been in a situation where we understand monies are not being spent. So that might be the second reason. Maybe the third reason might be perhaps maybe something coming from the executive, and they've not been able to have some clear understanding, given that in our country, a lot of the legislative business comes from the executive. So it could be the case that there are some kind of issues that need to be ironed out. But whatever it is, Martin, I think it's not good for our country, because if there's any parliamentary meeting that is very important in the life of any parliament. It is the meeting where the budget of the country and economic policies are considered, and this is that one. And if we have a situation like this, I think it doesn't speak very well about our country, and also the fact that there has been an effort to reset the country. This is when we would have seen everything running smoothly. And then, most importantly, we are not in the 8th Parliament. We are in the 9th Parliament, where even if some members are absent, it doesn't really affect legislative business. So I think we are in for some interesting times,
right.
And we need to watch that space very carefully.
And that was actually one of the questions I had, that how would this affect government business? We have a government that intends to run as quickly as possible, cover enough grounds, and do that smoothly. Fortunately for this government, they have majority in Parliament. So yes. What could possibly be the hindrance for them to have the legislature also working so that the executive and legislature and probably the judiciary can all work in a coordinated manner?
I guess nothing is very interesting. I believe if it was the 8th Parliament, perhaps we would have heard from the leadership of Parliament clearly why this is happening. But understanding the nature of this Parliament, where the Speaker of Parliament is from the stock of the NDC, perhaps there are a number of things that the Right Honourable Speaker doesn't want to put in the public domain, and whatever it is, I think it smells like there is some friction between the executive and the legislature. And this needs to be dealt with as quickly as possible. Otherwise, and then we have to also remember, this is not a president who has the luxury of time, because he doesn't have a second term. This is a government that is already 1 year old. So they need to move very, very fast. And earlier they treat the legislature with a lot of care. I think the better it is going to be for the business of our country.
And finally, there should be a stipulated time that Parliament should sit, right? So maybe for 3 months continuous. Yes, so if there is this kind of a delay, who would demand that they do the extra days that they have not been sitting?
Well, and they don't have in this particular meeting, they don't have the luxury of any extra days, because by Christmas everything has to come to an end. So that is where, there's even a more serious problem, because in other meetings they could increase the number of days and so on. But this one, by Christmas, everything has to come to a close so that the Appropriations Act is passed, and then government spending begins. Otherwise, we are going to have a crisis, because if the budget is not passed before the rise for Christmas,
that could be problematic.
It will mean that government doesn't have money to spend, and we might be experiencing some of what the U.S. is experiencing right now.
Right, Doc. Well, like you said, it's early days now, so we'll just keep our fingers crossed and see how the coming days play out. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We've been speaking to Dr. Rashid Draman, who is the Executive Director for the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. And like he indicated, there are a lot more questions than answers, and we are uncertain on what exactly the reason might be. But if you're just joining us, the news is that the Speaker of Parliament has postponed the recall of the House, and the reason he gave is that it is because of reasons beyond his control. As to what that exactly means, well, the coming days will probably let us know. But this is still Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. Let's go on to some other stories we have for you. The very disturbing story that came